Greetings everyone, I am RSV. This is my Bow Braver guide. It will cover basics, intermediate, advanced, gearing for the Bow Braver in Ratem. Starting with the basic, I'll go through each and every PA available and the skill tree. Firstly, we have the bow's normal attack for PP recovery. Of course, this does also include the slide attack. The bow's normal attack has two variants, a rapid fire variant for single target, and an exploding AoE variant for multi-target. Use the exploding multi-target variant of the normal attack when enemies are clustered together. Moving on, we have the Flex Arrow. Flex Arrow is essentially 3 PAs in one. A quick homing arrow, a slower piercing arrow that hits multiple pieces of an enemy, and a long charge, hard-hitting arrow. The piercing arrow is pretty much your bread and butter. This is your go-to for most things at a range. The homing arrow is a bit of a niche. You can use it to quickly deplete your PP, however. If you want to get more bonus out of an ability I'll be talking about in the future. Moving on, we have Frenzied Firework. This one is an AoE option mainly. However, it does have some benefit for melee combat as well. Frenzied Firework has two variants. A long-range exploding arrow that does minimal damage and isn't really used, and a close-range scatter shot, which will damage enemies near you immensely. And the last PA is Dimensional Ray. Dimensional Ray has two variants, a volley and tracer arrows. The volley causes arrows to rain down on an area, is a passive DPS option, while the fully charged Dimensional Ray becomes a tracer arrow. The tracer arrow stores 3 charges, and will be used up when you attack to deal extra damage. This is very good to be used during intermissions and before fight. And last but not least, we have Brave Combat. Brave Combat is a skill that reduces PP consumption and increases attack PP recovery for a fixed time. Using the skill while it is activated will launch a powerful attack. This powerful attack is very powerful and is not to be missed. If you wait the entire duration of Brave Combat, you will not be able to do the attack. It is good to use the attack just before the effect ends, as the big attack will also end the PA. The Bow Braver also has 3 evasive options. 2 are tied to the weapon action. However, the other is just a simple step counter. The 2 weapon action options are a dodge at the end of PAs when it's timed right. This will also cause some damage, but is not a perfect counter. However, will get you some distance and can get you out of troubling circumstances. The weapon action counter, however, is a very useful neutral damage dealing ability, which can allow you to take advantage of times that you would have been damaged. Note, the weapon action for Bow Braver does not cancel a lot of Braver PAs, so be careful when enemies' attacks are coming out when you're shooting. Some of your PAs will also do a basic weapon action movement, and will move the player some distance. This is not a really effective dodge, however. And I will note that the Bow Braver can stand at a range that just moving left or right is a good way to dodge most things. There will be some things that can still hit you, but those things are rare. Moving on to the skill tree. The skill tree looks like this. There are some skills here that are useless to the Bow Braver. However, most of them are really useful for the Bow Braver. You get Brave Combat from your skill tree. It is the first one, and works for Katana as well. Brave Combat's exact effects are reduce PP consumption by 70%, increase PP recovery by 200%, lasts 30 seconds, and has a cooldown of 120 seconds. Moving down on the Brave Combat tree, we have Brave Combat Short Cycle. This one is actually very important. Shortens the effect duration of Brave Combat, but also shortens the cooldown time. So, what this one does is halve the duration, but halve the cooldown. This allows you to use Brave Combat more often, and allows you to fire off more of those big hitting blasts. Brave Combat Final Bonus. This gives you a bonus based on how many times you hit within the duration. To max this out, you need to hit 100 times in the duration, which isn't necessarily feasible. However, this will cause the Braver to really want more PP, as it can restore 100% of your PP. Final bonus surprise. doubles the number of Brave Combat final hit bonus hits when you attack a boss enemy during Brave Combat. This allows Brave Combat final bonus to increase its gain of hits a lot faster. So instead of needing 100 hits, you only need 50. Back up to the top, we have Brave Combat Arrow Mates. During Brave Combat, adds resistance against launches and knockbacks caused by enemy attacks at specific points when attacking with a Photon Art. This basically adds hyper armor to some points of PAs. Rester Effect Amplifier. This one's self-explanatory, increases healing of Rester for both main and subclass. When you've been knocked down, you can perform a Breakfall to quickly get up. Breakfall HP gain causes you to heal a little bit when you do this. In some cases, it can cause you to heal more than the damage you took, thus negating the damage that you took. Brave Spirit, temporarily increase PP recovery when you're attacking, as well as potency of your normal attacks and counters when you perform a successful guard with a weapon action. Bow Arts combo PP save. Chaining Photon Arts together reduces your PP consumption by 15%. This is self-explanatory. Use bow Photon Arts and your bow will spend less PP. Bow Illusion Counter. When you successfully dodge using a weapon counter, use a normal attack will unleash a counter. This is the bow counter I was talking about earlier. Tracer Arrow. Arrows released by normal attacks gain homing ability. This enhances your normal attack to home in on enemies, and can be very useful. Bow Illusion Plus. Using a weapon action while pressing the directional pad at just the right time after releasing a Photon Art will make you slide while attacking. This is the other evasive option I was talking about, the one after using a PA. It is very handy, and honestly I use it more than the Bow Illusion counter, as the weapon action has a very short iframe and is very hard to pull off at times. Anything else on the skill tree that I have not explained is for Katana and not for Bow Braver. I have filled up those slots in that circumstance because I had leftover PP and nothing to spend it on. Moving to intermediate tips. There is not much intermediate tips I can give you for the bow, other than that the bow should be using a dump rotation. However, after the first dump, it isn't necessary to stay in a dump rotation, and I'll go into more depth in that in the following section. However, it is important to note, a dump rotation means that you will have higher bursts at the start of your combo rather than during, so keep that in mind. Bow Braver can really burst really hard if played right. Charging up Flex Arrow to max level before fight starts, as well as having a Dimensional Ray charged applied to you. This can get you some early burst damage. Try to keep Volley applied as much as possible. It can be hard to apply Volley on moving targets, so do use it at your discretion. Volley does not cover a very large area, and it is honestly debatable whether or not it's worth it in some scenario. It is definitely worth during Brave Combat, however, as more hits allow you to gain more Brave counter bonus faster. Using Frenzied Firework can be also niche as well. It should do more damage to a close single target than a Piercing Arrow. However, you may not always be in a situation where that is the case. If an enemy can be hit in multiple places by a Piercing Arrow, the Piercing Arrow is likely going to do more damage. So use that at your discretion. Onto advanced techniques. As I said before, those should be using a dump combo. What I failed to mention then was that there is a sustain combo for Bow Braver, and it has a lot to do with the evasive option I mentioned before. After evading using that option, you actually regain some PP, meaning that you do have a sustain rotation that you can perform. Additionally to this, you do have other options for sustain, as you can very quickly just fire off 3 normal attacks, and being in the normal attack rotation, as it is a lot faster, can allow you to use your weapon action more effectively, as you do not need to cancel the basic attack as it's faster. Whereas you cannot cancel the PAs with the weapon action, so it is just a safer option. You can, however, use the weapon action to cancel your charging. Using Brave Combat at the last second. This can take a bit of practice, as it is very easy to forget to use it, or miss it by a second. So, I would initially aim to be using it on 2 seconds, and then aim for 1 second, and just practice it up. It is a bit annoying to get right every single time. Also, in some circumstances it is more prudent to just use your Braver time immediately. For example, if you hit your Braver time before Renisfera goes into its transition phase to get extra damage in, this can be very helpful, as you'll recover PP in the intermission phase anyway, and you may as well get some extra damage on the board, and by the time he's up, it will probably be mostly recharged anyway. However, knowing when to do this can be quite tricky, as if the enemy is up too fast, you are essentially just wasting potential damage that you could have had, as it does reduce the amount of PP that you consume while attacking, meaning you can get more attacks out in the duration. So, you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned Bow's Peanut Butter yet. Well, the reason why I haven't mentioned Bow's Peanut Butter yet is because knowing when to use it can be finicky. It is best to use it during breaks on bosses, and always be hitting weak points with it. This is pretty obvious, but Bow Braver's Photon Blast is very hard to whiff, so it can be used in more complicated scenarios to push the boss over that breaking point, to allow your allies to get some extra damage in quicker. Moving on to gearing. Gearing with Bow Braver, as I aforementioned, is a more nuanced thing, as both the best in slot bow weapons, at least in my opinion, the Fiveler and the Relic weapon for Bow, are both crit weapons. Compounded with the fact that Bow is ranged, you should avoid using augments like Dreadkeeper like the Plague. You do not want potency floor increase, at least as a standalone damaging augment on a Bow Braver setup. The reason for this is that potency floor directly competes with critical rate. So if you have critical rate through Fiveler or Relic, you are losing value on potency floor increase. Therefore, you do not want to use it. However, you should still build PP and potency on a Bow Braver build, as Bow Braver scales with PP because of Braver time. You can, however, since the class's range, make some defensive sacrifices, so it is still viable to go for certain things, such as Alt Secretor. The augment build I would recommend is Precision Free or Alt Secretor Free, Ale Domina, Better Soul 2, and Gigas Might 3, and I recommend putting this on your weapon and units as well. As for units, it is up to you which unit to go for. Brias is a very good choice for Bow Braver, as it gives a lot of PP, for not using Dreadkeeper for the PP. So Giant Armor ends up being a good option still for the Bow Braver.